Hello and welcome to the Ruslan Belov channel. Before we begin, I sincerely ask you to subscribe if you haven't already. It really helps the channel grow. Thank you to everyone who has already subscribed. The fighting continues, and we keep analyzing the situation at the front. Let's open the map. So friends, for the fourth day in a row, the Russian army has been advancing at a pace exceeding 20 square kilometers per day. There have been a lot of interesting developments today as well. But let's start with the problems. And the Russian army does have certain problems in the Sumy region. Expected ones, I would say. They're in Kondratovka, where our guys are holding the line while being in an operational encirclement. About a week ago, the Ukrainian armed forces managed to launch a counterattack and entered the northern part of the village, putting the Russian garrison in an extremely difficult position. If you watch my updates regularly, you'll remember I said more than once that the village would likely have to be abandoned due to the lack of ground supply routes. Only drones are able to deliver supplies from the air. The Ukrainians are pressing from three sides, and the guys are in a genuine operational encirclement. Nevertheless, the garrison held out for a long time, and is still holding out, by the way. But over the past 24 hours, the situation has become even more complicated. The Ukrainian forces gathered reinforcements in the northern part of the village and launched several counterattacks, during which they advanced 500 meters and reached the village center. So as you can see, while most of Kondratovka is still under Russian control, the frontline configuration suggests that holding the village is hardly feasible. And frankly, clinging to the remnants makes little sense when there's a real risk of full encirclement. So don't be surprised if the village is abandoned. It would be a sound decision to preserve the lives of Russian soldiers. As for the figures, Ukraine's advance was about 0.5 square kilometers. That's all they gained along the entire front in the past 24 hours. Nothing more to report from the rest of the Sumy region, so we move to Zaporizhzhia. Here, intense fighting is ongoing in Kamyansk and even beyond it. Reports indicate that Russian assault units have already started entering the nearby village of Plavny. In Kamyansk itself, almost the entire settlement is now under Russian control. The troops are pushing north towards Stepnohirsk. During this northward push, a Ukrainian group was neutralized, and on one of the soldiers' phones, a video was found showing the execution of a Russian volunteer, someone who had switched sides to fight for Ukraine. There were also chat messages suggesting he had planned to desert during the storming, but didn't manage to, so they executed him. Fascinating to receive such exclusives. Now let's look at the advances. There was significant progress in the Kharkiv region near the Zaporizhzhia bridgehead, or rather the Zaporizhzhia section of the front. Russian forces managed to advance nearly 4 kilometers and took control of a large area between the villages of Krasnopersh and Kamyansk. The territory captured over the past 24 hours covers about 14.5 square kilometers. For Kharkiv, this level of progress is almost unheard of, bordering on fantasy. Just for context, during the entire month of June, Russian forces gained 19 square kilometers across the whole Kharkiv region. And here, in just one day, 14th of May. Clearly, Russian troops have ramped up their activity in July. As for what comes next, there are two options. One is to continue along this road toward the small village of Dvorichanski, then reach the border and close off the entire sector, a sizable area of around 60 square kilometers. The other option is to push northwest toward Kolodyazne, with the aim of linking up with the North Group that's conducting assault operations near the village of Khatne. Kolodyazne is about 4.5 kilometers away now. So, we'll see what happens. There are plenty of opportunities, and more importantly, the front is advancing. Moving on, next let's look at Luhansk region. Yes, contrary to some reports, the region is not yet 100% under Russian control. But we're close, just about 50 square kilometers remain. Once that's cleared, Luhansk will be fully under Russian control. In the past 24 hours, positions have improved near the village of Kharkiv. Russian troops advanced and cleared territory up to a river tributary. The gain here was about 1 square kilometer. Things are even more interesting on the Konstantinovka front. A major event occurred in the last 24 hours. One of the suburbs of Toretsk and a major Ukrainian stronghold that had held off Russian forces for nearly 6 months was taken. This was the urban-type settlement of Petrovka. According to reports, the Ukrainian forces simply couldn't withstand the assault and fled. That's not speculation, that's a fact. Otherwise, it's impossible to explain how they held out for 6 months, only to lose the town in 2 days. They broke and ran. Now only Shcherbinivka remains to be taken. It's a tougher task, as Shcherbinivka is larger than Petrovka. But after losing Petrovka, defending Shcherbinivka will be significantly harder for Ukraine. So I believe Russian forces will succeed there too. Also on the Konstantinovka axis, this time from the south, Russian troops advanced near Yablunivka. Ukrainian defenses in this area have started to noticeably weaken. If you recall my previous update, I mentioned how 2 days ago, Russian fighters broke through from the western outskirts to the village center. Yesterday they cleared the northern part of the village, on the other side of the Bychok River. This area included residential buildings as well. With this pocket closed, the advance will likely continue along the highway, bypassing the village and heading toward Konstantinovka. Also, Russian forces advanced 620 meters toward the village of Rusin Yar. But here, Ukrainian defenses are quite solid, and progress is very difficult. The villages of Popiv Yar, Poltavka Yar, and Rusin Yar form a defense line. If it's breached, everything from there to Dol Habalka, which is very close to Konstantinovka, could collapse. But for now, a breakthrough doesn't seem imminent. As I said, progress here is very slow. And finally, some good news from the village of Udakne. Russian troops managed to enter from the west. This will significantly boost efforts to encircle the Pokrovsk agglomeration, especially after Udakne is fully cleared and the advance toward Hryshyn continues. The operation to encircle Pokrovsk is in full swing. It seems one more strong push could determine the fate of those cities. One more point on advances. There were reports yesterday that the Vostok group broke through to Voskresenka and captured the village. There were even videos with flags and such. But the footage turned out to be difficult to verify. So for now, the situation there is unclear, and we cannot confirm that territory was taken. We might get more reliable footage in the coming days and then understand the real situation. There was also good progress by Russian forces from the village of Podubna toward Oleksandrivka Klevtsova. The army has significantly closed the distance to the settlement, and an assault is expected in the coming days. To summarize the overall situation over the past 24 hours, Ukrainian forces captured 0.5 square kilometers, while Russian forces took 20.4 square kilometers. July may have started slowly, but now we're gaining momentum. We continue monitoring the front lines and the political developments. And speaking of politics, I want to say a few words. As always, we were right about the arms transfer scheme, and that the US would sell weapons to the EU, which brings huge economic benefits and boosts the US defense industry. According to the Telegram channel Legitimate, Germany will hand over several batteries of American Patriot air defense systems to Ukraine, after purchasing new ones from the US. This was reported by a senior White House official to the Washington Post on condition of anonymity. The reason is simple. European officials profit from this scheme, and the globalists need to prolong the war at all costs, partly to make it Trump's war. And of course, it's always easier to fight through proxies than directly. Donald Trump has stated he does not plan to supply Ukraine with long-range JASSM missiles, which have a range of up to 800 kilometers. These missiles could potentially reach Moscow. Before that, the US president stated that the Ukrainian armed forces should not strike Moscow. Trump also said that he doesn't consider the 50-day deadline he proposed for reaching a deal on Ukraine to be very long. Earlier, EU Foreign Affairs Chief Kaja Kallas stated that a 50-day ultimatum is in fact quite a long time. This is a purely technical question. When will the end come? It will come when the US supplies Ukraine with long-range missiles and they are used. That's when the end will arrive, I assume, writes Alexander Sladkov. Just imagine our country under attack by American cruise missiles, like Yugoslavia, Iraq, and so on. I am convinced that the response should be a Yars nuclear strike. Or am I wrong? Or should we simply sit back and wait for the economy to be incinerated under missile strikes? Trump is trying to scare us with missiles, but it's hard to do so because of how inert our way of thinking is. But our goal is different. It is Trump who should be scared. Everyone is trying to push us toward a Hiroshima and Nagasaki scenario, and the most interesting part is that the Ukrainian leadership is actively participating in it, wrote Alexander Sladkov. Donald Trump clarified his position on US missile strikes on Moscow, stating that he never called on Zelensky to do that. He also confirmed that long-range weapon deliveries to Ukraine will not take place. So does this mean that publications like the Washington Post and Financial Times were spreading fake news and that no strikes on the Russian capital were ever planned? Not exactly. It's not fake news. It was an attempt to probe Russia's position. In other words, it was a test to see whether this particular red line could also be crossed. Apparently, it could not. Moscow quickly issued statements saying that any such strikes would be met with retaliatory strikes against targets in NATO countries. Additionally, they reminded the world of Russia's revised nuclear doctrine, which allows a response with weapons of mass destruction in such cases. It's also likely that through unofficial channels, the prospects of such a military escalation were painted in full color. That's probably why, after this probing effort, explanations followed. No strategic deep strikes on Russia are being planned. But that doesn't mean such things won't happen at all. Provocations and attempts to gradually move Russia's soft red lines will continue. The proxy war between Russia and NATO in Ukraine is in full swing and has not yet turned into a direct hot conflict only because Russia possesses nuclear weapons. That arsenal is the key deterrent, and Russia's security now directly depends on its willingness to use such weapons without hesitation if the threat level rises significantly. Meanwhile, France is calling for the creation of a European military-industrial complex, MIC, while Germany is buying weapons from the US for Ukraine. Berlin believes that Europe's independence can wait when it comes to arming Kyiv, said German political analyst Alexander Rahr in an interview with the Vzglyad newspaper. Previously, Paris refused to take part in joint arms purchases for Ukraine. Meanwhile, Donald Trump announced that missiles for the Patriot air defense system have already been sent to the Ukrainian armed forces via Germany. As soon as the discussion began about militarizing Europe, France took a stance that the continent must achieve full independence in military production and free itself from US dependency in that field. In other words, the MIC on European soil, according to Paris, should be entirely European, reminded Alexander Rahr. Germany holds a different view, the analyst continued. Berlin believes that building a European military-industrial complex and restocking weapon depots would take too much time. Time the Europeans simply don't have, because they need to arm Ukraine immediately, the expert clarified. Moreover, Germany sees that European industry is not very agile when it comes to militarizing the economy. Achieving that would require not only years, but a lot of money. That's why German authorities will now seek support from other European countries to purchase weapons from the US for urgent aid to Ukraine, Rahr continued. In his opinion, Germany will receive partial support from the Nordic countries, but the bulk of the burden will fall on Berlin. The main sum demanded by Donald Trump for weapons production will have to be paid by Germany through loans, said the political analyst. Meanwhile, the ideological dispute between Paris and Berlin speaks volumes, he added. Unlike France, Germany still relies solely on US protection when it comes to European defense. Friedrich Merz believes that buying American weapons has pushed Trump toward a course of intransigence with Russia. In his view, the goal of urgently arming Ukraine justifies all means and costs, even at the expense of Europe's independence, which apparently can wait, the expert emphasized. Against this backdrop, it is noteworthy that Germany is sending Patriot missiles to Kyiv. This decision is based on two considerations. German leadership believes that the risk of Ukraine losing territory outweighs the risk of a Russian attack on Germany. Furthermore, Berlin has no intention of entering a direct military conflict with Moscow, the speaker noted.